If you've ever been in a relationship, you know that it's always complicated. Wouldn't it be nice to know what you are getting into when you start a friendship, romantic relationship, or even a business relationship in an interpersonal context? There are many models that attempt to explain the inevitable ebbs and flows of these types of relationships. Most of them are classified as stage models, meaning that the relationships go through various stages on the way up to and away from intimacy. You're probably familiar with Mark Knapp's staircase model, or the elevator model developed by Stephen and Susan Beebe and Mark Redmond. This video focuses on another variation of the stages model, proposed after these two models by Joseph DeVito of Hunter College of the City University of New York in 1993. Rather than the 10 distinct stages in both the staircase and elevator models, DeVito's model groups some of the stages and adds an additional stage of repair, ending up with 6 stages, which is why his model is called the 6-stage model of relationships. Specifically, this video will cover the basic design of DeVito's model, go through each stage, and end with an analysis of the movements between stages. To simplify this model, I'm assuming you are already aware of the basic principles and assumptions of stage models of relational development and have at least a basic understanding of other stage models. Let's start with a basic examination of this 6-stage model. DeVito opted to make his model more straightforward, not connecting it to a metaphor like the staircase or the elevator of his predecessors. His underlying premise, though, is the same. When we are in a stage, we have a choice of staying in that stage or moving on or out. We can move toward intimacy, deepening the relationship, or away from it, indicating the deterioration of the relationship. As a preface to this model, DeVito notices that both partners may or may not perceive their relationship the same way or in the same stage. His model makes use of molecule-like circles with arrows pointing the way out or in. Let's look at the basic concept of these circles. When you are in a stage, you'll see 3 or 4 paths signified by arrows. One exits the relationship entirely, under the assumption that the relationship can end at any time. Another shows the path to the next stage, moving closer to or further away from intimacy. You'll notice that these arrows are double-ended, signifying that you can move forward to a new stage or backward to a previous stage. The third path is circular, or what I call a self-reflective arrow. It's used to show the stabilizing aspect. We may remain in a stage, but we aren't always in the same place, as relationships are constantly changing. Each stage is composed of 2 substages, an early and a late phase. For example, the first stage, contact, has an early stage of perceptual contact, when you observe or perceive the other person without interacting with them, as well as a late stage of interactional contact. You are actually communicating with them in some way. One last comment before we move to the actual stages. DeVito's original model was presented vertically, like an upside-down T. To make it easier to display on a slide, I reoriented his model horizontally. And Dr. DeVito was generous enough to clarify his model with me and even discuss possible tweaks based on my questions, which I've included in a separate section in this video. The first 2 stages comprise the relational development stage, contact and involvement. The contact stage is when people become more aware of each other, formally or informally. It takes the initiating stage in Knapp's staircase model and combines the first 2 stages of pre-interaction awareness and acquaintance in Beebe and Redmond's elevator model. During this stage, we assess the other person and, based on this assessment, consider moving over to the next stage, staying in this stage for a while, or deciding that this relationship won't work and getting out of it. Some researchers say we make this assessment within the first 4 minutes of our initial interaction. As I said earlier, there are 2 substages. Here they are perceptual contact and interactional contact. You often observe people, perceptual contact, before you talk to them, interactional contact. And it's not uncommon for this stage to be asymmetrical. One person may notice the second person, but the second person doesn't notice the first. As you can imagine, first impressions are important, and there is often an emphasis on physical appearance as well as personality qualities of friendliness, openness, and so on. If you choose to advance to the second stage, involvement, you start to develop a light friendship as you interact with each other. You feel connected to each other, what DeVito calls mutuality. He breaks down the two subsections of involvement into testing and intensifying. Testing is the word he uses for Knapp's experimenting stage and Beebe and Redmond's exploration stage. This is when you try to learn more about each other, engaging in small talk, looking for similarities. Remember that in the contact stage, you assess the possibility of a relationship and decided to continue the relationship at the same stage, progress to the next stage, involvement, or exit the relationship entirely. In essence, the purpose of this early involvement stage is to verify that your original assessment to continue was valid. If you like what you see, your relationship intensifies, a stage you will find in both the staircase and elevator models. This is when you spend more time together, self-disclose more, exchange gifts, do more favors. In general, your relationship becomes closer. If you are thinking about moving your relationship from a friendship to a romantic relationship, you may start flirting more or do things to show your partner that they don't want to lose you. If you want to move your relationship from just friends to best friends, you will find ways to communicate that you want to be even closer. So even if you have moved into the intensifying stage, you are still testing your partner to find out how they feel about the relationship now and if they are interested in increasing intimacy. And don't forget that at any time in this and other stages, you can choose to remain in this stage, slide back to an earlier stage, or exit the relationship. And this is just fine. Most relationships don't go beyond the involvement stage, if only because a more committed relationship requires dramatically more time and effort, both limited commodities reserved for very special relationships. Assuming you want to deepen the relationship, you'll move to the next stage of intimacy. You commit yourselves to each other as part of a whole, the integrating stage in the staircase model, and, well, the intimacy stage in the elevator model. You are BFFs, best friends forever, SOs, significant others, and BAs, before anyone else. You are a social unit. The early phase of intimacy is interpersonal commitment, where you commit to each other, but privately. The later stage of social bonding is when the commitment becomes public. Notice that this is a different version of the bonding stage in the staircase model, without the requirement for a formal public commitment. Unfortunately, if you believe that you will live happily ever after, constantly in tune with each other and never having serious fights, you will be profoundly disappointed. Relationships are full of ups and downs, questions of whether to keep the relationship going or dissolve it. So you'll find times when the relationship slips into the deterioration stage. The early phase of this stage, intrapersonal dissatisfaction, is when you find yourself unhappy. Intra means within, so this is dissatisfaction that you are experiencing. You do a lot of introspection, echoing the title of the 1981 song by the punk rock band The Clash, "Should I Stay or Should I Go?" Some things may have happened to damage the relationship. For example, trust may have been broken. Or perhaps, in the words of the 1965 Righteous Brothers song, you've lost that loving feeling, and the relationship seems boring. You may be experiencing what some call weakening bonds. The later phase is interpersonal dissatisfaction. Now your dissatisfaction manifests in the relationship itself. You spend less time together and experience more conflicts that are increasingly difficult to manage. Awkward silences abound and conversational topics are limited. You'll recognize this as the turmoil stagnation stage in the elevator model and stagnation in the staircase model. From here, you have a choice. You could choose to end the relationship, moving to disillusion, or try to address the issues in the repair stage. While you can slide back into the intimacy stage, you will likely have to spend at least some time in the repair stage. Let's assume you choose to repair your relationship. You can start with the early phase of intrapersonal repair. This is what you can do yourself. You may reframe the issue, identify your role in the breakdown, make adjustments in your behavior and thoughts, and so on. When or if you decide to work on the relationship together, you are engaging in interpersonal repair. You come up with ideas on how to address the issue jointly, negotiating new agreements and expectations, and developing or modifying behaviors. If you can't or are unwilling to repair the relationship, you'll slip back into the deterioration stage, where you can remain for a while or make your way out through the dissolution stage, where DeVito says you cut the bonds that tie you together. You will likely start with interpersonal separation, where you both distance yourself from the relationship through avoidance, moving out, and then making it official via social or public separation, formalizing the end of the relationship by breaking up, divorcing, and so on. Here's where you find the exit, if you can't pull yourself back up to deterioration and repair. You'll recognize the similarities with the avoiding and terminating stages in the staircase model and separation in the elevator model. DeVito suggests that, to avoid getting to the dissolution stage, you should be paying attention to your relationship in the intimacy, deterioration, and repair stages, proactively addressing issues that may result in conflict, and managing conflicts that may arise. He calls this process relational maintenance, comparing it to the process of taking your car in for maintenance before things get bad enough to break down. Some versions of the model classify the 3 stages of intimacy, deterioration, and repair as the relational maintenance phase of the model. However, DeVito says that, while he may have made that adjustment at some time, he would not say that today. Now look closer at the movement between stages at the end of the model. As originally drawn, there is no arrow connecting the repair stage back to the intimacy stage, implying that even if you repair the relationship, you must move back through the deterioration stage to return to intimacy. Fortunately, I was able to contact Dr. DeVito. He suggested another way of looking at it. Repair and deterioration interact, with repair involving dealing with the causes of deterioration. So it would be a back and forth effort between these 2 stages, allowing easier access back to the intimacy stage. When pressed as to whether repair could be accessed from other stages, like involvement, DeVito indicated that, upon reflection, from repair you can go back to contact or involvement, as in, let's just be friends, or let's just see each other occasionally. Thus, you could visualize some additional arrows between repair to each of the preceding stages of intimacy, involvement, and perhaps even contact. Double-ended arrows, of course, as you could still move back and forth between and within the stages. Let me be clear, however. The original model does not include these arrows. This is my suggestion after discussions with Dr. DeVito. No matter the relationship, though, you'll always have movement, and it will always be complicated. But with a basic understanding of the stages your relationship will likely go through, you may be able to address potential issues early, thus limiting the time you may spend trying to bring your relationship back on track. And hopefully, that will reduce the angst associated with these complexities.